All right, how's it going, guys? Ryan from Elevate Cyber here. Today I have a pretty interesting video, I certainly think. This was inspired by one of the comments you guys left me on how to set up your home lab for pen testing, what I would recommend for that. So, yeah, this is a pretty great way to study, I would definitely say. And you have a lot of freedom and flexibility in how you want to do this. It all depends on what is it that you want to learn, right? What is it that you want to practice on? And here's where you can kind of be creative with it a bit, because you can use a home lab to actually test some pretty cutting edge stuff. Like you could be looking at any piece of technology, so long as you stand it up in your environment or find a VM that already has it stood up, and you can actually do some pen testing stuff. This is how people that are more of like the security researchers and stuff, this is how they actually test out, look and find like those 0-day vulnerabilities and stuff, and then they submit POCs, write-ups of, proof of concept of how they exploited it, and they submit it to companies, get, a lot of times get some nice money from that as well. So the very first thing you need, right, and a lot of you guys, I'm sure, probably already have this, have your attacker VM set up. It doesn't have to be Kali Linux. Could be Ubuntu, Kubuntu, anything like that. Any Linux distribution is normally preferable. It could be a Windows environment as well, certainly. And in some cases, it actually might make more sense to have a Windows box, like if you're testing, certainly if you're testing Windows applications and looking for buffer overflows on that, for example. It's probably best to have both environments. I have a Windows offensive environment as well. But you need some kind of virtualization software, first of all. This is Virtualbox, which is what I've been using for quite some time. I used to have a license for VMware back when I was in college. I got that as like free, part of tuition, really, not really free, right? But that expired a while back. So I've been using Virtualbox for a while, and I would definitely recommend it. Completely free. If you just Google Virtualbox, go on their website and download it. And then once you've done that, a lot of you guys have probably stood up VMs before if you've downloaded Kali Linux or whatever within the context of Virtualbox or VMware. Normally, you just have to install either an ISO file, or you can install a pre-built VMDK, which is basically like a disk image of the OS that's already been installed and everything. That's what I prefer to do. I've made videos on this in the past, but I like to go, and I've made videos on this before, but what I like to do is go and to the offensive security side, actually, offensive security Kali image, something like that, right? And they have pre-built Kali Linux boxes, meaning you don't have to install it or configure anything. They've already done that for you. You just install the image. Now, keep in mind, if you do this first one up here, this is for VMware. Now, we're using Virtualbox, so we don't want to use these, actually. We want to use these Virtualbox images instead. 64-bit would be just fine. So you download that, and then once you download it, you can just drag it onto your Virtualbox here and set up your VM. Now, as far as settings go, some of this depends on how many resources do you have, like how powerful, how beefy is your system, how many resources do you have to allocate to it. Linux boxes typically don't need as many resources as Windows, just something to keep in mind. For my system right now, I got 32 gigs of RAM. Maybe you have less. That's fine. If you can at least do like 4 gigs of RAM, I would say, on your main attacker Linux box, should be good. I have more, so I'd choose to do about 8 gigs of RAM. I like to give it 2 CPU cores or processors to work with. I notice it just makes things a little bit more smoother. And other than that, there's not many, I don't think much else that I change. Now, I have it on bridged right now because I was doing some testing with things on my network. Normally, NAT is where you would want it. if you have a bunch of things on a NATed network, it's basically all your VMs are on their own network. So it's a bit more secure. If you're unbridged, it's a little bit less secure because I'm basically connected to my apartment's network, right? So potentially could introduce some vulnerabilities to other devices on my network. Like if I was looking at malware or whatever, if I was like doing some testing on malware, definitely wouldn't want to do that in bridged mode. So, I mean, that's pretty much it as far as the settings that I have tweaked for this. Now, once you have that out of the way, right? And a lot of you guys have probably already gotten this far. Then you got your machine here, obviously. So the next thing you need to find is a machine for your lab environment, right? Starting to set up your lab, right? That really depends on what is it that you want to learn. Now, one thing that's really cool is you have ExploitDB, which I'm sure most of you guys know about. You've seen me use it on this channel many times. You've probably used it as well. But one thing you might not have known is you can actually use ExploitDB to download different software, right? Isn't that cool, right? So not only can you see vulnerabilities, like say I want to work on doing testing cockpit CMS, because I know there's a remote code execution vulnerability. Well, I can look at this. I can read a bit about it. I can Google cockpit CMS RCE or something like that. And I get this link here. I can like read about it in some other sites. Maybe read about the write-ups to see how they work. I can maybe check Twitter. Not too much information here, but maybe like on a site like this, I can read a little bit more information about it. And then essentially, what I can do is I can actually download the cockpit CMS software, or any software for that matter, on here. I can straight up do that from here. Let's see, right here, download. So if I click that, it'll actually download this vulnerable software. Now, I'm not too familiar with this software. I don't know if it's something that is specific to Windows or Linux or what. But what I could do, I mean, it's a CMS, so maybe it would work either way. It's just a PHP thing, right? So once I've downloaded it, I could actually, before I do that, what I would do, right, is I might like go and install Ubuntu. And, that's done simply by just going to their website, right? You just type Ubuntu, ubuntu.com, and you can go ahead and install it straight off of here, desktop, and then whatever version of Ubuntu you want to install. So I get that installed. I get the ISO file. I run through the installer. I get it set up. Get my VM. Now I have my Ubuntu VM, right? I fire that up, and then I install Cockpit CMS, just an example, right? Or whatever CMS I wanted to, or not CMS, whatever piece of technology I want to explore, I want to test, right? I install that onto this box, and I host it on this box, right? And I mean, you could even do it. You don't even have to have a separate box for this necessarily, right? I might be able to do that in Kali as well and just test it locally. That's an option also. But let's just say you want to be a little bit more realistic, I guess, in your lab setup. You can have a separate Ubuntu box for it. And so now you got this victim box, your Ubuntu box, running this vulnerable software, and you have your attacker Kali box or whatever you prefer. Now you can actually test it. You can Google stuff to see like the exploits, and you modify the exploits and you practice getting it until eventually you're able to get that RCE. And now, hey, you have a shell within your own network, and you basically use your network as a test environment. That's pretty awesome, right? So that's where you would put it in natted mode, like in the network settings. That would be my recommendation, natted. And if they're both in natted mode, then that will allow you to be able to communicate back and forth between the two boxes in a more segregated manner. It won't be on your local network, right? So that it's pretty as simple as that, but that is more for the specific case that you want to test a certain technology, right? Maybe you want to go more general, you want to go more on the CTF side. Well, that's something you can definitely do as well. There's a site called Vuln Hub, and there are other sites now since then that you can also do this from. I'm pretty sure. This one is one of the tried and true ones here. It's been around for a while. Go Vuln Hub, and then you have all these different vulnerable machines. Well, these are all VMs that people have created, and maybe you want to work on your, I think, WordPress game, right? This is WordPress, I think. Could be wrong here, but yeah, here, here's an example, right? This is a box right here. Gives you some information on it, and it is a an OVA file, right? So you just download it from the mirror or directly, and you bring it into your Virtualbox, and then you'll have that machine. That's kind of like what I did with Metasploitable 2, right? I have that on here. Then I fire it up. I figure out its IP address. Maybe I do that through a MAC address, like ARP command or whatever. Basically, I got to figure out what its IP address is, and then I can test it, right? And I can go at it just like I do the hack the box stuff, right? The difference between Vuln Hub is you're actually hosting it on in your own lab environment, not on another server's lab environment. So, yeah, that's pretty much all there is to that. That's how you can pretty much do CTFs that way. Of course, the way I normally like to do CTFs nowadays is through those dedicated environments like Hack the Box and stuff like that. But I definitely do see a nice use case for ExploitDB. You can download any of these, all kinds of, pretty much anything that has a known vulnerability on it. You can directly download that software straight from the site, stand it up on another server and practice it, right? Maybe there were certain things giving you trouble on OSCP or whatever, and you want to practice it in your own environment. You can replicate that by going to ExploitDB and downloading it and setting it up in your own environment. You can practice buffer overflows that way. There's some things here that are vulnerable to buffer overflow attack. You can download them straight from here, set them up on a box, and you can, if you get the tools for get your debuggers and stuff on a Windows machine, well, you can practice buffer overflow exploitation as well. So maybe that's something I'll do in a future video, but yeah, definitely good to be aware of this stuff. And this is basically just a video on how you can set up your own lab environment and start learning this stuff without anyone else's permission. Go out on your own, be proactive about your education in this area and really elevate your skills here, and you will be marketable. You will be someone with a job in this field in no time, I guarantee it. So if you found this video helpful, be sure to hit the like button. Definitely helps me out on the algorithms, and subscribe as well for more content. And I will see you guys in the next video.